Hello, everyone, and welcome to 2020 BFG Expo. Today, we're going to have speakers. Chris Beytes is with us today, and for the next 3 days, we will have speakers also. Emily Myrick of BFG tomorrow. Chris Beytes will be back again on Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday, he will have a Garden Center panel discussing 2021 planning, and on Thursday, new varieties. Let's take a walk around and show you how this works at the BFG Expo. You can hover over our map, you can search by vendor, category, or booth number, and watch as the interactive map helps guide you to your desired location. Once you're in a booth, you can order now, you can view the top show deals, go to the vendor's website, look through their catalog. You can get your order history from last year. You can view vendor descriptions, look at their featured items, or contact the vendor. When attending our shows, there are benefits. If you have placed orders pre-show and complete the order at our show, you receive an additional 2% discount. Most orders will have May 2021 terms. There are pallet alley deals, daily lunch specials, a pallet auction, and more. Today's speaker is Chris Beytes. He's from Grower Talks, Green Profit, and Acres Online. He's the editor of both Grower Talks and Green Profit magazines. In addition, he is the author of the widely read weekly e-newsletter, Acres Online. This newsletter has over 23,000 horticultural industry folks in 66 countries. Chris is a graduate of the University of Florida. He has a major in journalism and a minor in ornamental horticulture. And now we're going to go to Chris.
Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate the intro. I was hoping that was when I was supposed to come in. 66 countries. You know, Joe, it used to be 68 countries. And I made the mistake of bragging about it in one of my newsletters because I thought it was kind of cool. 68. Two of the countries that I go to or did go to were North Korea and Iran. I actually had readers in North Korea and Iran, and I was quickly informed by one of the legal type people here at Ball Horticultural Company that the State Department does not allow you to send newsletters with ads in them into North Korea and Iran, and I had to remove, I think, 7 total viewers, readers from those newsletters, and I thought, what a shame, you know, because somebody, everything they knew about the outside world for inside North Korea.
Yeah, you were doing your part for diplomacy and enlightenment.
That's, yeah, pretty sad, isn't it? Anyway, well, let me pop up my screen share, which I think I've got the capability to do as soon as I open my PowerPoint. You know, you got to get these little things working on your screen here. All right, there's the PowerPoint. Now we hit the share the screen, and then there's the PowerPoint. So, all right, let me get my desktop all arranged here. Anyway, today we're doing what I like to call Acres Online Live. If you get my newsletter, and we'll talk about that in a second, it's called Acres Online. This is sort of a live version of it. It's just a little bit of everything that I'm seeing, that I'm hearing. You know, I mean, there's not much going on. It's been an extremely quiet, slow spring. I don't know what I'm going to talk about for an hour, but we'll find our way through it. But that's what Acres Online Live is. And in some cases, I'll talk about things that I might not put in print, so pay attention. First off, happy Respect for the Aged Day. It's actually a Japanese holiday, and I thought that's pretty cool. You know, they don't shove their elders into assisted living and you know, just wait for the inheritance. They respect their elders, and so I'm hoping that even if you don't like my talk today, you'll at least show some respect for your elder here, Mr. Beytes. But again, who am I and why am I here? Well, I am the editor of Grower Talks and Green Profit magazines, the weird magazine that's joined at the spine like that. I've been doing it for, I think this is my 27th year. We actually just passed our 1000th issue of Grower Talks. This behind me here is commemorating that. 1,000 issues, and I think I've been here for about 330 of them or something like that. That's a long history going back to 1937. So we've seen a lot in that time, but this spring has been like nothing any of us have ever seen, and we'll talk a bit about that. And I do a newsletter called Acres Online that you can subscribe to if you go to growertalks.com. And then click on the newsletter link. But part of what I'm going to be talking about today, because I understand we've got quite a few retailers in the audience, retail garden centers, and so I'm taking a bit more of a retail slant than I might normally, since a lot of what I do is on the grower side, but I can write about retail with the best of them. But we have a newsletter called Buzz that Ellen Wells does, and you may want to sign up for that one if you're not already getting it. If you are, well, some of these things I share today might be a little bit familiar. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, let's talk about what I haven't been talking about lately, or in this case, haven't been writing about, that I had been writing about, I think, a lot up till about March 15th, when this thing locked us all down. Yeah, that stuff. Cannabis and hemp. It seemed like that was the hot topic before we had a pandemic, and every grower in the business was looking to get into hemp and cannabis one way or another, and retailers are still figuring out, how am I going to be able to sell this stuff other than some of these untested and unproven supplements that are probably being offered to me to stick next to the cash register? Are we ever going to have hemp plants or cannabis plants that we can be selling, or gardening supplies? That one I can't tell you about yet. There's still too many laws and rules that are very sketchy and up in the air with the federal government, so we'll have to see where that goes. But I haven't been writing about that quite so much, although just a little bit lately. I haven't been talking about mergers and acquisitions as much as I normally would, with the big getting bigger and the small guys figuring out where do we fit. Although just recently has been some growth. Bonnie's, the giant vegetable company in Union Springs, Alabama, they've got a brand new headquarters. Howling, a giant tomato producer in Canada and California, and I think Utah has just announced another 30-acre range that's going into North Dakota. So that's a pretty big deal. In the cut flower world, which really took a beating this spring. Be glad you were not a cut flower grower or a florist this spring when the event business went away. But Sunshine Bouquet purchased a big grower called Esmeralda Group, creating like pretty much the world's biggest cut flower grower. Something you may not have known about, but it's happening out there. So those things have been happening. But what have I been writing about? Well, I think you know what we've been talking about this spring. Everybody's been talking about it. You're sick of looking at that image. I could have made my background look like that. I'd look like ABC World News Tonight with that thing floating behind me, but I wasn't going to do that to you. But it has been a topic, and so and it has impacted the entire planet. I mean, never before in history, possibly, other than, I guess you could look at the world wars, but even those didn't affect every country out there. Never before have we had something impact everybody. 7 billion people, however many there are, all wearing face masks out there now. It's kind of an interesting shared experience when you think about it. And what'll be most fun is when we can look back, when it's kind of all over and behind us and nothing but a memory, and except maybe some shots that we're taking, to say, what were you doing then? What'd you think about it? So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about consumers, how they reacted, kind of what they were doing before, during, and after. We're going to talk about spring. Now, you lived spring. I didn't. I just reported on spring, but you were out there living it. I'll be very curious if your results are the same as what the results I share. You might put a comment in the Q&A area if you want to say that you're right on, Chris, exactly what I saw, or nope, that wasn't the way it worked in my greenhouse. And of course, every business is a little bit different. So your results may vary, as they say. Some interesting stuff I found recently that I'm going to share for the first time ever is that something that I believe it's McKinsey, which is a research group, calls the next normal. We're talking about the new normal. I don't like that term, except I'm I'm kind of having to accept it. But in a way, this is sort of like the next normal. Things change, you know, as we go along for whatever reason. You know, have a normal, and then things change. You have a new normal, but really it becomes the next normal, and the next normal, and the next normal. And I think we're entering one of those right now. Something that I normally share only with growers, or at least it's got a grower slant to it, how to plan for next year. It's on everyone's mind. And I think, I thought about it. I think the advice I'm going to offer, I think it kind of fits for what a retailer would be doing. Well, we'll see. It's another one you could put a comment area in the comment area and say, I think that works, Chris, or that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard, Chris. In which case, let me go back to the respect your elders business there. All right. Finally, some fun ideas, because I like to leave people on a happy note, and I think I've got some fun ideas for you. So let's dive right into it. The pandemic. You saw this. This could have been your garden center. People went crazy this spring in our garden centers, even while they were wearing masks. This was Mother's Day weekend at Pesci's greenhouse here in Chicagoland, and it was fascinating to see. But I kind of wanted to dig into what were the factors that influenced consumers' habits this spring, and why did we seem to be a beneficiary of that? Well, there were quite a few factors, and we'll get through some of them here. And because you lived a lot of these yourself, you know, we were all consumers locked down in the pandemic to one degree or another, and certainly boredom influenced people's habits this spring. You know, you couldn't do, in many cases, what you would normally do in a morning and evening, especially on the weekends. And eventually you were binge watched out. We all hit that. You'd run through everything on Netflix, which probably you swore you'd never subscribe to, and next thing you know you had, because you'd run through everything on all those other networks. So boredom was one of them. Fear. This was a big one, you know, especially with our industry. Food safety and security. Is there going to be enough to eat? Maybe we need to get out and you know, and start our own garden just in case things get really bad. Today it's toilet paper. Next week's it's produce, right? So that was one aspect of it. This is a great one, and one I'm really hoping is going to have some long-lasting effects, and that is the need to educate our kids when they aren't in school and we're having to teach them, do Zoom classes, etc. Lesson plan number 3, probably after, you know, the first 2 ran out, were let's get out and plant a garden. And I'm hoping that's one of those where it planted the seeds of gardening in these young minds, and they find themselves having to do it when they're older. Let's hope they didn't get turned off or burned out on the idea, but works the opposite way. This is another good one, the need to connect with nature, better known as biophilia. And biophilia is not anything I've known about a long time. It's a more recent kind of a thing, even though the term is pretty old. But biophilia is the idea that humans have an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. Somehow that got dropped off of there, other forms of life. And I like this, and I want to believe it's true, that every single one of us, deep down inside, some not so deep as others, have that need, that born-in need to connect with nature. You know, there are very few people who would probably look at a plant and say, I don't like it. I'd rather have that concrete block over there, you know, or that brick. No, plants, just like puppies, speak to people. And when you're stuck in your house or apartment, I want to feel like that little seed germinated a bit and said, I got to get outside. And so people took advantage of that. And this was really the end result. Our business, our industry went crazy this spring, as I hope all of you saw. Of course, the first 2 weeks, from about, say, March 15th to April 1st or thereabouts, depending on where you ply your trade, were scary as all get out. We didn't think there was going to be a spring. And then suddenly we didn't know it. We don't think spring was ever going to end. And for many, it never did. Sales continued right through the summer and are continuing now. As some people said, they ran out of plants before they ran out of spring. It was so crazy. And to kind of prove that, let me show you the results of my grower talks weekend sales survey, which is something I've done now for, oh gosh, I've lost track, 12 years, 13, 14 years, something like that, where every week, starting around April 1st or so, I used to score March, but I kept getting ones and zeros, and I got tired of that. So we figured spring starts April and runs through May and June. So basically, 3 months of spring. And I ask you, how were your sales? You guys get the email from me Monday morning or Tuesday morning, and I say, give me your 1 to 10 rating. It can be scientific, it can just be your gut, and you send them in. I get over 1,000 scores through the season, so pretty decent numbers. And what happened was, for this year, there's the finished colored map. The US scored 8.1 and Canada scored 8.2 for all of April, May, and June. Now, what does that relate to? Well, let's look at last year. 2019, the US scored 7.3 and Canada scored 7.2. So a full point difference, which doesn't sound like much, but last year was actually a really good year. And if we look at a longer trend line, you'll see how good the last 2 years were, but how massively better 2020 was than any year going back at least 7 there, right? Yeah, 7. Yep, 7. And I also, because many of you, not all, but many of you are from Ohio, where BFG's office is that we're presenting for. I put in the Ohio numbers just for comparison, and I was saddened to see that Ohio came in at just 7.4 for its April, May, June scores. That's a good score if you look at national averages. 7.3, 6.7, 6.7, 7.1, 6.9, 6.7. 7.4 is darn good, but for this year it's well under the average. But then I looked at the individual month score, and April in Ohio was really bad, which it could be. If there's lousy weather, if it's still cold, snowy, rainy, miserable, people are not going to get out and garden no matter what. You might have also had, and I don't know this for certain, you might have had a little slower opening of garden centers as essential than some other states, and that could have slowed things down. But if I eliminate April and just look at May and June, your average was 8.7. 8.7 average, and everybody knows May and June is when you do all your sales anyway. You may have a good April, but it's not a big dollar month, a big numbers month, like May and June is. So if we look at just May for Ohio, which was mind blowing for everybody, let's look at the scores. Your May was 9.1. May 2nd and 3rd, first weekend of the month, you sent in 5 10s, 2 9s, and an 8. For a 9.5 average. That's the scores I got from Ohio. That's a good number of scores for a state. A lot of states I only get one or two scores. Mother's Day weekend was not so good. And I think the same thing happened in Chicago. We had one good day and one lousy day. You had 9 scores that ranged from 2 to 7. It was all over the board for a 7.0 average. But look at the next weekend, May 16th through 17th, 8 10s and an 8.5. For a 9-point average. And then Memorial Day, 6 10s and a 9 for a 9.9 average. That's how your May was in Ohio. I hope all of you who are from Ohio experienced those same sales, and you're not the guy who sent me the 2 going, it didn't work for me. Otherwise, we got to find out why. And then, because I get scores from all around the country, the US and Canada, usually 40 plus states and 5 or 6 or so provinces. These were the words that you guys used: historic, mind-blowing, record smashing, holy, holy guacamole. Maybe that's what the first person said. Every day is a Saturday. I know I wrote that. Screaming busy, absolutely crazy. It was unprecedented. And this is also why you're wondering, what do I do for next year? What's it going to be like in 2021? So we'll talk about that. Then I also ask you to guess. So that's the scientific survey where I add up and numbers and figure averages. But I also say, okay, the season's over. It's like the end of June. Tell me your season rating. And the national average was 9.4 for the US, and a perfect 10 for Canada. Every single person who sent me a score from Canada said it was a 10. So that's we're never going to see a spring like this again in our lifetimes, I don't think. I know many of you are hoping not, because it was crazy to live through it. Some data though, because my data is it's mostly opinion, but Charlie Hall from Texas A&M, he doesn't trade in opinion. He trades in actual data. That's why he's an ag economist. And surveying the graduates of his Eagle program, which is a very high level grower oriented program. I don't know if there's any retailers in this or not, but it wouldn't kind of surprise me. Of those he surveyed, I think there was about 50, 71% of them were flat or up from last year. In varying degrees. A few up a whole lot, 15% up 11 to 25%, 35% of them up 1 to 10%. And about 30%, 31% were down from 2019. So Charlie reminded me that not everybody had a great spring this year, and that's a shame, but that's always the case, whether it's weather oriented or what have you. Certainly Easter was non-existent. And if you were a grower, as Charlie's people may have been, and you were growing Easter lilies and other, holiday plants, you put them all in the dumpster. And that could really hurt you. If you're involved in cut flowers in any way, you had a terrible time of it there. So that's some data. But then if we look at specifically at retail from Charlie and also from the Garden Center group, on average, retail sales were up 12.1%. Overall over last year, with the average sale up 17.5%. So that's a big jump. And then Garden Center group members, who some of you may be, retail overall up more than 30% over last year, and the average sale up 14.3%. And actually, these numbers I think they may not be full season, so they may have improved a little bit. So bottom line is, it was a great year for a lot of people, just about everybody. Not everybody, but but a whole chunk of the industry. And of course, I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know here about what was hot. I mean, there were a few specific categories like veggies and herbs, for a lot of the reasons I mentioned before about food security, the desire to get out and actually grow my own garden. I spoke to 2 or 3 of my neighbors in River Ridge, which is my world famous neighborhood that I survey every summer, about what they did this spring. And I think 3 of them said that they had finally had the time, because they were home, to get out and plant a vegetable garden. In one case, a woman had had a raised bed garden kit in her garage for several years, she told me, and she finally got around to setting it up and planting her garden. So that was nice to hear. And in fact, when I talked to Monty Plant's CEO earlier this spring, he told me that they estimate 16 million new Bonnie customers, vegetable customers, and I've heard numbers as high as about 20 million new gardeners coming into to enjoy our hobby, our lifestyle for the first time. So that's a great thing. And again, I'm hoping that biophilia, that connection, is going to keep them coming back. Other edibles, fruit trees and shrubs, things like that. Really anything that wasn't nailed down. And you all live that. The stories are just amazing. I was at a garden center here in Chicagoland. I would say it was probably late May, early June, and a friend of mine works there, and he called me in the back, said, "Chris, I got to show you this." And he pulled out a dill plant, 4-inch dill, that had literally 1 frond sticking up out of the middle of it. And he said, a woman tried to buy this. I wouldn't let her buy it. I think it might have been the last dill plant on the bench. It about had to be. He said, I can't sell you this. And she said, I need dill. I'm desperate. She was trying to sell 1 little frond. So he probably told her, come back next week. We'll have some fresh pots or something. But that's what they were buying. Anything not nailed down. And you also live the challenges of how do we manage this? We were so lucky to be able to be open. But what do you do about masks? What do you do about social distancing, about traffic flow, and all these different things? And everybody came up with their own solutions, some more effective than others. A lot of very regressive signage here. Normally, your consultants would say, try to be a little more friendly. But hey, you did what you had to do. No kids, no dogs, no food, no sales, no service, no shoes, whatever. Just say no coronavirus allowed. That might cover it. This again was Pesci's that I showed you before. This was how they set up their registers. They actually took 10 days from the lockdown, kind of during the very beginning of it, to completely redesign their traffic flow of their covered shopping area, their indoor area where the registers are, to really flow as many people through as efficiently as possible. You see, they've got 5 registers, I think 6 registers actually, and they told me that that this was so efficient. It was better than their old system. So they're probably going to keep the system. They may get to drop the plexiglass eventually, but this was much better than what they had before. So I thought that was a pretty cool story. And here you get a little more close-up of what they created. Everybody knows about this. There's not we should have bought plexiglass stock before all this started, is what we should have done for sure, right? So, and then growers, who I spend more of my time writing about, they face the same kinds of challenges with, how do you, because their retail customers were ringing the phones off the hook. We need plants, we need stuff. So growers, once they got going, were busier than ever trying to fill their greenhouses and ship product. They didn't necessarily have a full staff because maybe some of the staff was worried about coming in. They had to really quickly figure out how to social distance, how to provide sanitation. How do you stand on a production line all day long, normally right across the way or right next to somebody else? You see the solution there on the bottom right. So they had to figure it out as well. Now, on to the big question, and one of many big questions. Will these strong sales last? And we were asking this, kind of the end of June, and then sales kept going in July, and they kept going in August. And now from everything I hear, mum sales are going crazy. I've heard some mum growers have already been shipping their late season, like late September, October, the very latest stuff in tight bud, just to be able to meet the needs of their retail customers. So it seems like so far the strong sales are lasting. Something else that now I'm not happy to report this, but competition for our customers' attention is coming back very slowly, more slowly than we'd anticipated or hoped. It's still very difficult to go to a restaurant or a movie, the other kinds of entertainment that would normally take the attention of our customers. You can do it in many cases. Sometimes it's harder to do it, but also consumers are leery about getting back out in public in many cases. And so that sort of leaves us as the one thing that they can still do safely. Hopefully they like the end result of their gardening this spring, inside and outside of their house. And they'll continue to do that to one extent or another. Also, the work from home and the stay at home is continuing for the reason I just mentioned, but also because offices are opening slowly. My office is here at Ball Horticultural Company headquarters in West Chicago, Illinois. I would show you my office, but they just finished a big remodel and I have nothing but bare white walls and no bookshelves and just piles of junk in here. And it's not the least bit attractive as a Zoom background. So I give you the fake one, but we're only allowed 50% occupancy here right now. So probably 150 or 175 people are still working from home, even though they're gainfully employed. And that's good for us, and I'll talk about why in a bit. And many growers are still sold out. I've talked to a lot of tropical growers down in Florida, and they are booked solid for 2021. And one of the pieces of advice I could give you right now is if you're looking for houseplants, you think you're going to need them, make friends with a grower or a broker, several of them, in fact. That's going to be important because I think from everything I've heard that supply is going to be the challenge in 2021, not demand. And I don't think I typed that in anywhere in any of these slides, and I should have. So note that down right now, that your challenge for 2021 is going to be supply, not demand. So be networking with your best growers and ask them for their favorite fellow growers, relatives in some cases, others that they may contract grow with, sources of material. Get outside your normal network of grower suppliers and broaden that out right now. And while there's still time to maybe do some bribery or bake them some cakes or whatever you got to do to make sure you're on that list when the plants come out. Something else, and this came out, I believe, the last time I did this was for BFG and their Minneapolis event. And a question came in the Q&A area, which, as I said, you could use that if you have any questions for me. And somebody said, what do you think is going to happen for Christmas? And I hadn't thought about it because this was still, I forget what month we were doing, Joe, but anyway, you can remind me of that. Oh, it was August, that's right. But I had to stop and think about it. I said, you know what? I think people are going to be more grateful than ever before. They're going to be home. They're going to be with small groups of family. Hopefully that'll be allowed. You know, you can have mom and dad over, the kids, the cousins or whatever, small groups. And I think because of that, Thanksgiving and Christmas especially are going to be more special to people, you know, kind of more heartfelt. And that speaks well to us because we provide things that can help make those occasions more special. And we'll toss Halloween into that as well because, hey, it's the one holiday where you wear a mask, right? What could be better than that? We're having to go around with these things on. Well, doggone it. If this was orange and I drew a jagged mouth on it, it could be a lot of fun. Maybe I'll work on that. So some other things I've learned just recently about why I think the strong sales are going to continue. Home Depot has announced that they're going to be doing, are you ready for this? 2 months of Black Friday deals. It's going to be like Black November and December, I guess, not just one day. I'm not sure how they're going to arrange it, but that's their plan. And another one, which I feel a little bit better about, not that I mind the Home Depot thing, that's all right, is the, oh, speaking of which, 99-cent poinsettias, they're going to have a tough time finding 2 months worth of 99-cent poinsettias, so that's still going to be a one-day deal, I think. But Walmart has announced that they're going to close their stores on Thanksgiving for the first time in years, meaning they're not going to close during the day and then reopen at 6 p.m. for people to come and get their, you know, $199 flat screen TV and kill, you know, a few people in the process. So, you know, maybe they're going to open at 1 in the morning, you know, because technically it's the next day. We'll have to wait and see. But still, I thought that was a nice note. And they're doing it because their associates have been working so hard and they wanted them to be able to stay home with their family. So, you know, a nice little token sort of thing they're doing. The one thing we got to remember about all of this, I think, is that weather is still our enemy, no matter what, you know, anything we've been through in the past. And I've been in this business now I've been here 27 years, almost 40 years in the business, and that rainy Saturdays are our enemy. And that hasn't changed, except maybe it has changed a little bit when they said that every day is a Saturday, which means you can go into the garden center any day of the week. And if you're working from home or staying at home, and you could shop on a Tuesday instead of a Saturday or a Thursday instead of Sunday, that maybe a rainy day is not such a bad deal. And you probably witnessed this spring people coming in and shopping in the rain. Because gosh, it's nice, it's cool, it feels good. I mean, if you're out of your house. So maybe weather isn't as much an enemy as it has been in the past, but I still think that's one thing we have to, you know, worry about, of course, especially when it comes to Ohio in April, when you could still have a blizzard. All right, consumers sort of post-pandemic, as we get beyond this to some extent, let's talk about it a little bit. Well, here's the thing about consumers. Consumers are crazy in the best of times, in normal times. Here's a good cartoon that spells it right out there. I think that's kind of fun. You know, so trying to read consumers under normal circumstances has always been a bit challenging. But there's something I've learned, and I think the demographers are realizing this as well. At least they're talking about it, and that is you can kind of put aside demographics. Not that they aren't important, and I just recently attended a talk, an online talk by a fellow who specializes in demographics, strictly numbers. We're talking population numbers of the generations. And when you look at that, the number of baby boomers there are, and we know that I'm one of them, that was the biggest population group for a long time. What was it, 70 million of us or something like that, or 77 million. Then Gen X came along. They're now age, I think, 35 to 55, and it's a much smaller group. And because there's lower numbers of them, some sales of some things have gone down simply because there's fewer people to buy them who tend to buy within that age group. And there are still things that tend to happen, you know, whether it's like having babies, buying your first house, those kinds of things happen, or getting married, kind of to, you know, in certain age groups, no matter what. And I think they, kind of always will, with exceptions, of course. But and then now we have Gen Z, Gen Y, also known as the millennials, who are going to be even bigger in number than the baby boomers. They're now age 18 to 35. That is going to be the big block of consumers that's going to impact everything. That already is. Those are going to be our future customers. They are the reason I think you can be confident overall that you're in a good industry, that there are going to be 80+ million consumers who are going to be buying houses, wanting to landscape, wanting house plants, wanting to grow their own vegetables. Just the sheer numbers of them, more than the boomers. They're driving the houseplant craze now, and it was the boomers who back in the the 70s drove the first houseplant craze with the macrame and things. Gen Y, the millennials, are driving this current one, and with those numbers, there's no reason to say that they won't continue, as will their Generation Z cohorts behind them. I don't know what the size of the Generation Z demographic is going to be, but we'll have to see. Other than that, I say forget demographics, and I just gave you 5 minutes on demographics. But to me, and I think other experts, interest in gardening happens by life stage, right? So you probably have very few 18-year-olds popping in your garden centers who are avid vegetable gardeners. There are probably more 65-year-olds who are coming in shopping for certain specific pepper and tomato varieties. And if you do have an 18-year-old coming in like that, hire them. Make sure they're in horticulture school, because they're one of us, right? Those crazy plant people. But it does happen in life stage. When you're busy partying, going to college, getting your career going, in your 20s, your interest in gardening is going to be, minimal. Then, boom, you get married, you have kids, and you may have an interest in a white picket fence and a few house plants that clean the air in the baby's room, so it's healthy. There's some opportunities, but you still are pretty busy, and your budget's tied up, so maybe you're not going to be able to do as much. But then you get a house. I guess that's when you want the white picket fence. When you get that first house and you start thinking about the landscape, once you have a few dollars available, that's when you're going to start being more interested in gardening. You got a place to do it, right? And then now these folks, their gardening may already be behind them. They may be enthusiastic gardeners, in which case take good care of them, but they may be slowing down now and saying, we're going to travel. We can't take care of the garden. We're going to scale it back. We'll keep a few things going, put in that drip irrigation system with a timer so we can go take the cruise that we want. So all these things happen by lifestyle. And of course, there are always exceptions, right? And these are the Instagram folks that we're reading about in all the magazines and newspapers. The folks with the Manhattan apartment with 1,000 house plants in them. And God bless these people. If you've got any who are your customers, again, hire them too and make them your houseplant guru. They're getting a lot of attention out there, and I think that's great, because they're bringing attention to houseplants to folks who wouldn't otherwise think about it. And if the mass media is reporting houseplants are the hottest thing, then that's great for us, and I hope that continues. But what you do need to kind of think about, more so that maybe you're not, instead of thinking about the 45 to 54-year-old upper middle class woman who is your affluent consumer with the most money in her purse, and pigeonholing her, what you need to think about is tribes. These are like-minded people. That has nothing to do with their age, their sex, color of their skin, how affluent they are. It's what do they love. And if you polled all of your customers to figure out who are the most the most enthusiastic vegetable gardeners we have, like the top 10, you can try this exercise with your employees, and find out how different they all are in age, color, sex, all these different things. It's not 65-year-old men with overalls on and a pitchfork in the back of their F-150, and pick other categories, whether it's house plants or flower gardening or perennials. You might find that they're vastly different individuals, all with a common love of one type of gardening. And so that's where you need to kind of target your marketing and your thought process at your garden center. Now, some other things about consumers sort of in this next normal phase that we're into, the post-pandemic era, as we hope things go away. You could do worse than ask Jeff Bezos of Amazon, what's your strategy? He seems to be doing okay right now with his particular strategy, but this came out in that how do you operate, whether it's a little garden center or Amazon, in a time where so much is changing? There's so much in flux. I mean, plenty of websites, big ones, have gone away. How does Amazon not go away? And his strategy is to focus on the things that stay stable over time. And I thought that was pretty fascinating from a high-tech company who built its business on, breaking the molds and creating all new ways of doing business. He's focused on the things that are stable. And I thought, well, that's something we should all pay attention to. And what is stable? Well, what is it that consumers want? These are things that have not changed at all over time, as far as I'm aware. And that is, they want a good price. They want service. They want an experience. They want a great selection. They want delivery. They want convenience. These things were the same pre, during, and post-pandemic, and they're not going to change. And now you can probably identify which ones has Amazon focused on: price, selection, convenience, one-day delivery. Now, experience. Well, if your idea of a good experience is going online and being able to click, one-click purchasing and have it done, well, okay. Service, only if you say that fast delivery is good service, but it's not personalized unless it's the recommendations that pop up. But he's certainly, he has picked prices, fast delivery, the huge selection, and they've done very well with it. The key to ask is, what of those can you best provide, especially if you don't want to compete with the Amazons of the world? I think probably the one we can do the best as independent garden centers, and even as growers, providing to our customers, and that is experience and service. Those kinds of things we can do. We can offer an experience that consumers, I think, will continue to relish. The beauty of going to a really nice garden center, strolling around, hearing the nice music, fountains, the smells, the sights. It's a magical thing. I think we all really enjoy it, and our consumers do as well. Now I want to get into, how's my time? Yeah, we're doing okay. This is the next normal, and this is pretty interesting as well. This is from the research company McKinsey on reimagining marketing in the next normal. 6 ways in which the pandemic has changed consumer behavior. Now this is kind of interesting because I just gave you 6 things that don't change, right? Now I'm going to give you 6 things that have changed. We'll look at it all in the end and see if it made any sense or not, or if I'm just contradicting myself. I just kind of realized that happened. But this is fascinating. So shopping. How has shopping changed? Well, this was a cool statistic. Experts say that we advanced 5 years in just 8 weeks of this spring when it comes to online shopping acceptance. 5 years of advancement. Now that's on a global perspective, not just in the US. We were already pretty advanced here, but they said that, I think they said 13 million people in either Central or South America bought online for the first time ever. So there was a lot of growth and development in online shopping acceptance this spring. 5 years worth. That's kind of scary. Consumers, because of that, they're turning to digital and reduced contact ways of accessing products and services. We saw that. We had to do curbside pickup, online selling. You as consumers were doing the same thing. You bought stuff on Amazon like never before. You did maybe some curbside grocery pickup, those kinds of things. And retailers are having to do that not as a temporary solution. For instance, my Jewel grocery store now has about 8 parking spaces out front identified as for pickup area, with the markings on the street and the signs right in front, and they could make that go away if they needed to, but I think that's here to stay, at least for quite a while. This is a new word for me, social commerce, but then I realized, oh, I get it, but it's shopping on social media sites like Instagram. I don't know if Etsy almost counts as that. It's like, it's kind of a flea market, do-it-yourself craft fair online, but finding ways to sell products through social media, social commerce, and that counts for you guys as well. You can easily do Instagram posts of the latest products, what just came in off the truck and is fresh, and we only have a limited number of them, 100 of these beautiful, you name it, just came in, and the first ones to come in and mention this, this Instagram post gets an extra 5% off or something. Have some fun with it, but that's on the rise. And all these things, this online thing is gonna stick with consumers because it meets several of those criteria: easy, cheap, safety. That's another one that I almost think that whoever drew that little cartoon of the 6 things that all consumers want, safety is maybe a new one to add to that. Something you never had to think about before. You didn't think about walking into a store and walking out with anything other than the products you put in your cart, right? So that could be something we need to think about, is how to make it safe. But the idea for how shopping, how you can be involved in this is kind of what I said before, is that you can provide the experience and the escape and sort of the personalized products and services that online sellers can't. And maybe you can find a way to do a hybrid of that in your store and online and on your website. We'll talk about a few other ideas there as well. E-services, more of this online stuff. During COVID-19, people are not only increasingly buying online, they expect to perform other tasks and access services as well. And we've been seeing this grow. Banking, bill paying, telemedicine became very big. I can't go to my doctor, so now these, teledoc apps and platforms are really seeing some growth. Fitness training. There's several products out there right now where you sort of have this, virtual trainer right in your house, so you don't have to go to the gym anymore. So that's interesting to see. This could certainly include, services that we provide, with plant delivery and then installation, lawn and garden care, consultation, kind of things we've already been doing because customers need that from us. But the challenge is if it becomes more obligatory, if you kind of have to do it to stay competitive, how do you do that, especially if you're just not that good at tech? Well, what we've been seeing is tech companies offering services to non-tech retailers. Numerous companies came out with online plant sales software and platforms for you to use to make your life easier. You don't have to have a web guy and build all kinds of websites and things like that. They're kind of doing the work for you, making it sort of plug and play. Bower and Branch sort of fits that because they've developed the online sales platform for trees and shrubs, and I think they're expanding that as well. And they partner with local growers and local retailers to kind of handle the last bit of that process, getting it the plant to the end consumer. But they've built the beautiful website, so there's some opportunities there that you're going to be seeing for e-services. This one's fun. The home. How has all of this impacted the home? Finding a spot in the new Command Central, which is what they're calling the home, for all the activities. Think about it. The crisis has made the home a multifunctional hub, a place where people live, work, learn, shop, and play. And what's one of the first things they want to do? They want to make it nicer. And what's one of the first things they add to that? I hope they're thinking of our products. And somebody called it the homebody economy. So this homebody economy is really good for our industry. It includes the food side of things, herbs, the kitchen garden, and it includes houseplants for all the different home offices, for the kids. If you point out that kids are smarter and they study better when there's a few plants around, and you haven't put some in their bedroom or their work area where they're on Zoom calls, there ought to be a nice spathiphyllum or a bromeliad or something there. That's something you ought to be selling. And that's why I think an idea for our industry is to classify and promote some of the offerings based on specific functions in and around the home office. The home living area, the Command Central area. In fact, while sort of digging into this, I found an article actually dates from 2018, pre-COVID, from Home Business Magazine, and it was an article called 5 Plants to Help Boost Home Office Morale. And I thought that was funny. If you got morale in your home office, maybe you need to fire yourself, right? Or have a good talking to yourself. So that was interesting. And then, yeah, look at this. This is an actual office setup in Manhattan, I believe. It's kind of like one of those incubator type places. But this is something you're going to see a lot more of, as whether it's home offices or real offices. We want to separate space, provide more social distancing, but provide more, health and more life into areas. Our products do that. Another next normal, the community. This is another one. People have stayed close to home in many ways. They're not traveling. So localizing the experiences people have has made the local neighborhood all that more important. We just haven't been allowed to travel. And when we are allowed to travel, many will, but many will kind of say, you know what, I'm just not going to take any chances, or I kind of like how we've, how we have what we have at, close by. I actually found I enjoyed working from home. I was really good at it, very productive. It was a bit of a shock to have to come back to a real office a couple of weeks ago when I did it. It kind of made me think of the first day of school. I was a little bit nervous. But this is an advantage for all you local businesses over the chains and online shopping. And so, you are a local business. You need to promote that, locally grown, locally sourced, locally everything you can do. But maybe there's ideas for taking it even more granular. Do you do specific things for specific neighborhoods or parts of town, at different times? Do a maybe down by the street level, depending upon how your neighborhood is set up, and really make people feel close to the business. Like you pay attention, not just to your city or your town, but this neighborhood or that street or this group or this school, or however you want to kind of break it up. I think there's some opportunities there that consumers will respond to. And then trust. This is a big one for everybody, and that is, do I trust that company that I'm going to go shop at? Is it safe for me? And I think we got away with a lot early on this spring. Consumers were very forgiving. There were those fist fights over ice cream and mask wearing, that you read about in the paper. But for the most part, I think consumers were pretty good about dealing with the lines and the hassles and this sort of thing. But as other retailers, like grocery stores or drugstores or Walmart or Home Depot, or as they get better at it, as they get more professional, more organized, we're going to have to as well. Because consumers are going to expect it. We just can't continue with sort of the handwritten paper signs and the problematic traffic flow and the too few cash registers with too many people. You're going to have to find a way to make it work and continue to provide some of these touch-free kinds of things that millennials and Generation Z are going to be adopting, because there's a lot of them coming to shop. They're going to be more used to this than the older customers. And so you're going to have to continue to fine tune things like curbside pickup, self-checkout. I've never been to a garden center that has a self-checkout area. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know if people think it's a little bit safer. So you're going to maybe have to offer a broader range of shopping options for consumers. Maybe you don't have to, because I always say, I didn't write this, I stole it from Anna Ball. For every trend, there's a counter trend. And I think that the more impersonal some retailers tend to get, with no touch, no people, no nothing, you can be that place where you come in and yes, it's still safe, it's secure, you've made sure of that, and you've talked about all your hygiene practices and things like that, but it's still a place where you can go and see people and get personalized service. And then purpose. Speaking of purpose, consumers want their brands to stand for something. And 61% of people said that how a brand responded during this crisis will have a large impact on whether they continue buying with that brand when the crisis is over. And we've been hearing from the younger consumers that brands are important, but that brand has to stand for something, and there has to be some social value, some social return, like like Tom's Shoes, where you buy a pair of shoes and they give away a pair of shoes to somebody who needs a pair of shoes. New consumers respond to that. And so what you and your brand stand for are going to be more and more important. And you have to remember, the brand is not what's on the pot. The brand is your sign out front. When they drive into your parking lot, they're choosing your garden center as the brand they choose. And so you've got to know, what does that brand, what does your company stand for? What kind of projects have you been involved in the community? What kind of partners do you have through the community or elsewhere that you support? And how do you project that? How do you treat your employees? And how do they then project that out to the consumer? And what messages are you giving to the end customer? I think that's an opportunity to stand out in a crowded marketplace, to make customers feel good about supporting you, and maybe they're going to be a little less likely to complain about a price, what they saw a lower price at Walmart or what have you, when they know that a portion of sales are going to the wildlife fund or the Humane Society or whatever organization that's close to you that you feel like you want to support. And you see big companies do it. Target always has a bulletin board talking about how much money they've donated to local causes. So why don't you have that? So that's what you need to do. Develop a strategy, communicate it, and demonstrate it. Back up your statements with action. All right, real quickly here, because we're running out of time. This is something that normally I talk to growers about, but I think it can apply to garden centers as well. I think it applies to the whole industry. And that is, how do you plan for next spring, for 2021, after a spring that we can't even figure out what just happened? Our heads are still swimming a bit. And that is, you plan for average. Now, I've done this survey dozens and dozens of times all around the country, and I ask, out of a 10-year period of time, how many average, I guess what I ask is, how many really good spring seasons do you think there are? And people usually say, 2, 3. And I say, how many really dismal, really bad, really 0 on a scale of 1 to 10 spring seasons are there? And they'll say, 1 or 2, something like that. And that tends to be what I hear everywhere. And this came from a guy from Ohio, as a matter of fact, John Van Wingerden. He gave me this idea. And that reality is expecting an average spring. And you should always grow for average. It's too huge a risk to overstop your facility hoping for an early spring and a cool summer. In other words, a really great season. There are some exceptions for retail, and that is because you can buy in. If things are great, you can suddenly get on the horn to your vendors and say, I need more, I need more. So that is an advantage that growers don't have. But in one decade, as I said, 2 great years, 2 lousy years, and that leaves 6 average years, good but not great. So if you grow or stock your retail place for a great season, you're only going to hit your plan 2 times out of 10. That's a really bad average as a manager. If 8 out of 10 times you missed your targets, that's not good. If you plan for great, but if you plan for average, like, this is based on all our years of history with this business, plus, 3% or 5% in because we want to grow the business. This is what we should be able to do. If you plan for that, 2 years out of 10, the real lousy years where it's rained Mother's Day, Memorial Day, and every weekend in between, it still won't be as bad as it could have been if you'd planned for great. You won't make as much, but you won't lose as much either. If you had 2 great seasons and you had only planned for average, well, those seasons won't be quite as great as they could have been, but you'll have still hit your plan and grown the way you wanted to. And maybe you had the chance to bring in some extra stock for that season anyway, and not leave money on the table. But 8 years out of 10, you will have hit your goal, whatever that goal may be. And so that's why I think planning for average makes it, I don't want to say easier, because nothing about this business is easy, but it kind of eliminates this whole, what do I do with the 2020 numbers? And our sales were up, 418% in May. How do I calculate that in? You don't. You look back over the history of your business and you think, okay, what should we have done under normal circumstances? yeah, maybe based on everything Chris says, this next spring is going to continue to be good. So we're going to, be a little bit, a little bit aggressive, a little more aggressive than we normally would, but you're still going to plan for an average season. So if you don't hit it, you won't lose as much as you might have. Finally, a few fun ideas. This one, well, I debated putting this one in. This is making the rounds of a lot of the UK newspapers, and it's called the Friendly Bench. It's a place in town that somebody has erected where folks can come out and sit and chat. And I thought, well, we don't want people sitting together. But then I also thought, well, you know what? I bet the benches, because there's one on this side and there's one on the far side. I bet they're more than 6 feet apart or 2 meters apart if this is England or wherever it is. So this may be kind of the sort of place that that you could have in your garden center as a really nice place for folks to get together, still socially distanced as long as we have to. But when we finally don't have to socially distance anymore, what a great sort of a promotion for our products, whether it's in your garden center or maybe in a someplace in the community, and it was sponsored by your garden center. So I thought that was kind of fun. The Friendly Bench, because Lord knows we need people to be friendly these days, don't we? Here's one. Everybody's asking, are we going to have Halloween this year? And as I said before, come on, it's a holiday perfectly made for a pandemic. You do it outside and you wear a mask while you do it, right? And yeah, and you can, the folks can throw the candy into the bag or leave it out front, if they need to. So, but trunk or treat is a thing, and you can actually go online. This is a kit that you can buy to decorate the trunk of your car. So what happens is rather than go door to door, you set up in parks and you have trick or treat, from the trunks of cars going around. That's how the kids do it. And the reason I put this here is, why not at the local garden center, right? It's a beautiful place to park, and you can provide the hay bales and pumpkins and other, assemblage of decor, and maybe even sell the trunk decor kits like this beautiful Peanuts inspired idea here. So there you go, something to do for Halloween. This was cool too, that a company called American Holiday Lights, which installs Christmas lights, and that's when most people do it. They said their sales this year so far, and we're not even at fall, barely into fall. Tomorrow's first day of fall, up 19% as people want to add lighting to their backyards just to make it a nicer place because they're spending so much time there. And I thought, well, why not get more, not just the the swags of typical car lot style lights, but a lot more than that. Why not really ramp up on your garden lighting ideas and use them around your garden center? There is nothing I like more than a garden center that's or than a garden that's illuminated at night. I've got a lot of lights in my own garden. It's a magical place. Well, why not one night at your garden center where you decide to stay open until 10 and the place is beautifully lit up so you can sell more of these lights? Could be an idea for you. And I think I have one more idea for you, and that is, and this fits perfectly with some of the online services that that you could be selling. Pleasant View Gardens up in New Hampshire has developed what they call small space gardens, smallscapes. And it's an idea where they've kind of taken what they do very well in hanging baskets, beautiful mixed combos, and spread it out to small space gardens. Just maybe no more than 8 or 10 square feet. In fact, I think they could keep the plants between $150 and $250 that go into it. Of course, it's proven winter varieties. You'd expect it to be, but they have a plan. They help retailers promote these. So they've developed a way to kind of offer a service and a kit almost at a low price to consumers. So maybe you can take that idea and adapt it for yourself, or hey, jump in with Proven Winners or Pleasant View and get on board with that. So that, my folks, as the clock hits 12:03 Central, is the end. And
hey,
I left everybody baffled, Joe. There's nobody typed in anything. But they also didn't type in, "I can't hear you, Chris. What's wrong with the microphone?" or anything like that. So that's always a good sign.
Less signs nice, or less post there. Thank you, Chris. A lot of good, thought-provoking information there for our listeners and viewers.
Let me stop my share. I'll go to the last slide. There it was. And there we are.
Okay. And just want to remind everybody, our show is ongoing through this Friday. Don't miss all the specials, Pallet Alley, clearance. And if you've ordered ahead of time, you get an additional 2% on your orders on our show website.
Oh, speaking of lunch, the lunch special, Joe, can you reserve me a roast beef and cheese?
Sure. Done deal.
Beautiful.
Thank you for joining us. Chris will be back on Wednesday, Wednesday.
Yep.
Tomorrow is Emily Myrick, and she will be talking about email marketing and for growers and garden centers. Chris will be back on Wednesday with a panel of key garden centers with gardening ideas for 2021.
I'm going to be picking their brains hard.
Yep. And on Thursday, Chris will be back one more time talking about new varieties for 2021. Always interesting to listen to, and does a good job. Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure, and I plan to take a good independent garden centers view when I share the new varieties that we gleaned from the spring trials that never happened, but we made them happen anyway. So
right. Thank you very much. Everybody have a good day. Bye-bye.
See you, everybody.